cool. So that's the first part of the contract of sale. The second part of the contract of sale is what we call the vendor statement, or Section 32. It's in accordance with the Section 32 of the Sale of Land Act 1962. Vendor statement, as the words imply, basically it's the seller's disclosure of what they're selling. Right? So this document basically presents or provides the buyer information relevant to the property that they are wanting to purchase or wanting to buy. Right? So the first page of the vendor statement would have a signing page of the vendor and or the seller and the buyer, meaning once they sign on the signing page of the vendor statement, the seller saying that I confirm everything that is in this document to be true. And once the buyer signs the vendor statement, the buyer is committing that I have already read and understood this document, and I know and I have sufficient information about the property that I'm buying. Okay, so that's the vendor statement, or Section 32. So when you're a buyer, most often than not, the agent would say, would you like to have a copy of the Section 32, which is the seller's disclosure of what they are selling. So what does the Section 32 contain, right? So first and foremost, it has to have what we call the Consumer Affairs Victoria's due diligence checklist. Again, just to repeat what I've said earlier, we would be talking about a property transaction specific to Victoria. That's why it's Consumer Affairs Victoria. Now the document is a checklist prepared by Consumer Affairs, right? And the checklist basically is a checklist of what a buyer needs to know before buying a residential property. So it would contain points like, is the property subject to an owner's corporation? What does that mean? Is there a flood and fire risk on that property? So these are just small tips, of information that gives you a hint of what to look for in the vendor's statement, in your Section 32. So it gives you a little bit of an understanding of what you're looking at in your Section 32. So in your Section 32, I would really advise that as a buyer, you have a look at what is contained in this Section 32. You might find it daunting, but just bear with it, because you would need to know, or you would like to know what you're buying, right? So you need to have information of what you're buying. And what does the Section 32 contain? So the Section 32 contains one, financial matters. What does that mean? Financial matters meaning what are the rates, duties, and taxes that are outstanding as to the property that you're buying. Are there any rates and taxes due? You have the insurance. If there's any insurance applicable, like owner builder's insurance, damage and destruction insurance. Land use, meaning what does the council plan on that particular, is there any plans on that particular property that would affect that particular property? Road access, is it a designated bushfire prone area? You would see those in the Section 32. Are there any outstanding notices or orders that affect this particular property? Is it under compulsory acquisition, say for example, meaning, are there any notices of intention to acquire this property, as they have they have stayed for there in that property for more than 15 years. Then you've got building permits. Now in Victoria, there's the rule that any improvements in that property within the last 7 years should be declared, and therefore you have to have building permits and attached to this particular section 32 if there are any improvements that require building permits that were made within the last 7 years. Are there any owners corporation affecting this particular property? Now, what does owners corporation say? Basically, it's if you have common areas, you have common driveway, or if you're purchasing a property in a building, they are governed by an owners corporation. So, and subdivisions and attachments. So, what are the attachments that would usually come with the section 32? Well, you'll have a copy of your title search. What is a copy of your title search? It is a copy of your title, because in Victoria we don't have physical titles anymore. So we're all digital now in Victoria. So all your titles, all will be you'll just see your title as a title search. Copy of plans and drawings, wherein you'll see where your property is situated. Where in the particular street is your property. What are their dimensions? And then you've got your land property reports. Land property reports would be your it's a report with a summary of where your property is, what council it is with, what utilities are there in that are on that particular property. Are there any planning? Are there any planning overlays? Meaning, are there any plans that would affect your lot? Is it within a bushfire prone area? No? Then you've got building permits and insurances, if applicable. Meaning, as I mentioned earlier, if there's any improvement in the property that requires building permits from the council, they should be declared in the section 32 if they were done within the last 7 years. So they should have building permits, they should have warranty insurance there. That's why, if there are any. Like now, Vic Road certificates. What are Vic Road certificates? Vic Road certificates basically informs you whether, are there any roads planned along that within your property? Meaning, would there be any road widening that would affect your property? And then, last but not the least, would be water services. So water services reports, meaning they tell you where your sewages are. Are there any easements that are affecting your property? So they can be found in water services reports. So that's your section 32 vendor statement. Now, for purchasers in particular, or buyers in particular, you need to ensure that your finance, if you're availing of finance, is arranged and approved unconditionally prior to the finance clause end date. Okay, so a pre-approval, just to give you a hint, a pre-approval is not an unconditional approval. A pre-approval is only good, meaning that the bank's willing to lend you this much because of your salary or because of your income. But they still need to see the property. They still need to value the property that you're going to purchase in order for them to be able to give you an unconditional approval. So make sure that you've got an unconditional approval before the subject to finance date comes, right? Next, buyers, do check if you're eligible for grants from government. Your first home owner, there's the guarantee. So it's best to inquire about this from your lenders. Usually financiers are the ones dealing with government grants, and there are some government grants that even help you out with your deposits. So instead of raising 20% deposit, the government's able to finance a certain percentage of the equity for you. So yeah. Then as buyers, you also have to be aware of additional costs of purchasing the property. So this is not the amount of the purchase price is not the only cost in purchasing a property, in buying a property. You'd have stamp duty when applicable. Stamp duty on the purchase. Then you have to also, if you're planning to transfer the purchase to a nominee. So if you put your purchaser as Mr. John Smith and or nominee, and you plan to transfer the sale to a Mr. John Doe later on before settlement, please make sure that you're aware that there are certain instances wherein if you have a nominee, you might be charged double duty. Okay? So again, this is just general advice. If anything, if this particular point affects you or you think might affect you, I would highly advise that you approach your legal advisor and get some legal advice with regard to that. Next, conveyancing fees. Obviously, there are fees that your conveyancer will charge you. There are registration fees and lodgement fees that will be added to your cost. And then there are adjustments. Now, what are these adjustments? Adjustments are basically rates, water rates, council rates, water rates, and land taxes, which, say for example, have been prepaid for the year, right? So a portion of which, from the time that you own the property till the end of the paying period, should have been your cost as a buyer, right? So you have to reimburse the seller for it because the seller has most probably prepaid it. So those are the adjustments that will be done, and your conveyancers will be able to calculate those adjustments for you, so you don't have to worry about that. Penalties and interest, obviously, yes. So penalties and interest, if for any reason whatsoever the settlement gets pushed back, then the seller would usually charge penalty interest on delayed or delayed settlements. Okay, so these are additional costs for that you have to be aware of when you're a buyer. Now, I put this as a separate thing. As a buyer, please visit or at least verify that the property described in the contract exists and it's there, right? So make sure that there is really a house there. It would even be better if you'd be able to verify the dimensions of the property. Don't just rely on the documents.